Welcome to the deep dive. So, today we have a really unique mission in front of us. We're taking a stack of sources all focused on this idea of, clearing the slate right at the beginning of the year.
Right at the start, yeah. Specifically referencing the energy around January 3rd, 2026.
Exactly. And our goal is to translate what the cosmos seems to be demanding into something we can actually use. Practical, emotional insights.
We're looking at material from Tarot by High C, which gives us two really complementary views. First, there's an astrology of the day that sort of lays out the cosmic blueprint.
Okay.
And then there's a StoryScope, which is this fantastic narrative example of these exact forces playing out in one person's life.
And that's our mission for you, really. We want to find the shortcuts, the mechanism for setting down the emotional weight you might have picked up last year.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're feeling this overwhelming urge for honesty or just to clear out clutter right now, our goal is to show you why that feeling is a guide. It's not a burden.
It's about not dragging that old weight into a year that is really built for momentum.
Yes. So let's start with the catalyst. We are dealing with an intense moment here. A supermoon,
And not just any supermoon, it's in the sign of Cancer.
which means it's amplified.
It's amped up, definitely. When we say supermoon, we just mean the energy is closer, it's brighter, and it feels much more emotionally demanding.
And when it's in Cancer, that shifts the focus squarely onto our emotional world, our foundations.
And crucially, our inherited patterns, the stuff inside our internal home.
Inherited patterns, that's the key, isn't it? Why does this supermoon make it less about today's stress and more about, well, historical baggage?
Because Cancer rules our foundations. So often, that means the patterns we picked up from family, from our childhood. The whole point of this lunation, according to these sources, is to drag up and expose any lingering emotional residue carried over from 2025.
So it's not just a bad habit, it's an inherited habit of denial or rationalization.
Exactly. It's forcing a confrontation with these emotional loans we took out years and years ago.
Which immediately creates a huge boundary challenge. I mean, if we're looking at inherited stuff, we have to figure out what is ours to feel and what we've just absorbed from other people.
That is the core tension. This energy exposes all the places where our boundaries have become porous, between ourselves and others, or our own needs versus what the collective seems to want from us.
And we just end up absorbing anxiety and responsibility that isn't ours.
Fundamentally doesn't belong to us.
So the instruction here isn't to go pick a fight.
No, not at all. The supermoon just asks for honesty.
Yeah.
The goal is to find that really delicate balance between being fully present with your feelings
Letting the discomfort just be there.
and also having enough emotional detachment to handle your responsibilities without, carrying the entire world on your back.
Okay, let's talk about how this actually shows up, because this is where it stops being so abstract. The sources say this tension flares up around specific topics. Money.
Money, expectations, emotional labor. Those are the flashpoints.
Right, so a conversation about a shared budget suddenly gets really charged.
Or workload at the office. And it's charged because it's revealing this underlying imbalance you've been trying to ignore. You suddenly have this realization like, wait a minute, I'm managing their stress, not just my own job.
If that's the symptom, let's look at the cosmic machinery creating all this heat. This full moon in Cancer is in direct opposition to a really powerful group of planets.
Venus and Mars.
Venus and Mars.
And that opposition is the engine of all this relational friction. You have Venus, which is what we value, what we want in our relationships, and then Mars is our drive, our desire.
And they're staring down this very sensitive Cancer moon.
Which creates this extreme tension. What we genuinely want on an emotional level is in direct conflict with what we've been accepting or just, tolerating in our relationships.
And that tension is why this moment can feel so volatile. It can show up as a necessary argument or a really firm boundary.
Or a confession, or even just an emotional breakdown. It's designed to illuminate these deeply buried patterns of people-pleasing or emotional reactivity.
And it forces this one crucial question, which I think is maybe the biggest insight from the sources. Why did you think that performing competence was a substitute for emotional truth?
That question really lands, doesn't it?
It does. But how do we define performing competence in our daily lives? Is that just being busy?
I think it's more specific. It's about managing expectations you secretly resent. It's when you say, yes, I can handle that with a big smile, but inside you're just crumbling.
You're realizing you'll have to sacrifice your own time, your own needs to meet that demand.
Right. The emotional truth is admitting I am overwhelmed or I need help or even I resent this. But we avoid that because we're afraid it'll make us look weak or unloving.
The performance lets us control the external story, but we lose integrity on the inside. It's safer, but it's completely unsustainable.
Exactly. And the work here is admitting that the performance is the problem. That saying, I need support, is actually the only way to build sustainable relationships.
So that opposition is forcing a choice between the comfort zone of performance and the necessary discomfort of the truth.
That's it?
If that's pulling us apart, is there anything in the sky that's helping us see the ropes before they completely snap?
There is, and then that's the other major connection. The full moon is conjunct Jupiter,
The great expander.
the magnifying glass. Jupiter turns up the emotional volume just enough that we are forced to see the full story, the real story, that's hiding underneath our reactions.
So if my feelings are suddenly huge, like if I feel deeply resentful about a really small request or super emotional about a money decision,
That feeling is a signpost. It's pointing you toward a much bigger truth that you've been minimizing.
the big feelings aren't meant to destroy us then.
No, they're meant to guide us. They're expanding our awareness, making it impossible to ignore that gap between our emotional truth and our outward performance anymore.
But dealing with those big expanded feelings can feel paralyzing. How does this energy help us actually move forward?
The sources are really clear on this. The goal here is insight before action. Even if you can't immediately quit your job or end a relationship, the awareness you gain is invaluable.
You know the truth now.
You know the truth. You know what emotional balance would actually look like for you this year. You're forced to create a new blueprint on the inside. And that is what matters most right now.
And that internal shift has an immediate external effect, too. The sources mention the change in the home environment, suddenly cleaning, reorganizing, getting rid of clutter.
It's a mirroring effect. Your body instinctively knows you can't do deep emotional boundary work in a space that's physically cluttered with the past. The physical act of clearing is a visible step toward claiming that new emotional space.
And looking forward, this whole thing kicks off a period of several weeks where the Sun, Venus, and Mars are all traveling together. Mercury joins them soon, too.
Yeah, stellium in motion.
What does that mean for us moving forward?
A stellium is just a concentration of energy, and having those personal planets grouped together right after this big boundary-setting moment is incredibly supportive. It's like, once the old weight is gone, this stellium sets the stage for creating new alliances, new ways of relating that actually honor who you are.
It's a support structure that moves in after the cleanup is done.
Precisely.
Okay, that gives us the map. Now let's see it in action with the StoryScope, the story of Mara's day of release.
Mara is the perfect case study because her day is all about these small, decisive moments of honesty. There's no grand drama.
The story starts with her just standing at the sink, rinsing a mug, and she notices the moon. It's low and swollen, and she feels this quiet shift in the house.
And a physical shift in her body.
Yes, the physical sign is so telling, a sensation in her shoulders described as a loosening, a subtle ache, like a knot remembering how to untie itself.
That is the body confirming the internal shift from the supermoon. The tension, that emotional performance, is literally unwinding from her muscles.
So her first act of honesty is to confront this stack of unopened letters she's been carrying around, a perfect symbol of denied responsibilities.
And the first one is about money, one of those flashpoints we mentioned.
But instead of her usual panic, she feels this clean, sharp recognition.
That's the Jupiter expansion at work. She's seeing the situation clearly without the emotional spin. And her internal thought is the new boundary. I can't keep pretending this isn't mine. She accepts the fact without spiraling.
It's pure emotional truth in action.
Yep.
Next, she moves to the past, a box labeled MISC. Inside, she finds a scarf that brings up all these memories of cooking dinners to smooth things over, of apologizing for emotions that weren't even hers.
That scarf is the emotional residue we talked about. It's the perfect symbol of inherited emotional labor. And her quiet declaration just to herself, you don't belong to me. That's a foundational act of boundary setting.
She's separating her identity from the job of managing everyone else's discomfort. And as she does this, the house itself seems to respond. The cupboard door that always stuck just swings open. A picture frame straightens itself.
The dust gathers in neat lines.
It feels like a quiet agreement.
It's this powerful validation. The universe is basically confirming the integrity of her choice. The external world starts to align when the internal framework is corrected.
And then comes the real-time test. The text from Leo. Can we talk tonight?
And she has to immediately apply the insight she just gained. She sees the subtext.
The real story underneath the question.
She interprets his text as, can you absorb what I don't want to feel? And that is her rejecting the performance of competence. Instead of defaulting to overgiving, she prioritizes her own need for space.
She sends a really simple, direct boundary. I need a bit of space. We can talk tomorrow. But what's fascinating is what happens next. She waits for the guilt.
The urge to explain, to soften his blunt, "Oh, okay," reply.
But it doesn't come.
All she hears is her own breathing, steady and present. The external demand for her energy has been cut off, and she is left completely intact.
That is the feeling of successful boundary work. The quiet realization that the world didn't end just because you chose yourself.
And that integrity leads to the dream, which kind of synthesizes the whole experience. She's in a house that is also her body, and people are there, expectant. They're asking for proof, for reassurance.
And her final boundary in the dream is the summation of this whole supermoon's demand. I can listen, but I won't carry you.
And the result is immediate. Some people leave. The table literally shortens and becomes manageable. Her emotional burden shrinks to fit her actual size.
She wakes up calm. She put something heavy down and discovered she could still stand.
And that honesty created a ripple effect over the next few days. The sources note how the world just rearranged itself in these small, telling ways.
Conversations that have been dancing around a point for months just suddenly landed on the truth.
Yeah, she gets these confessions from people she'd been carrying. A colleague, an old friend. They both admit they relied on her because she always seemed so fine.
But it's Mara's response that is the key takeaway for this whole deep dive.
Right. They say, "I thought you didn't mind."
And Mara just replies, I did mind, and that was the problem.
And that single statement just perfectly encapsulates that tension we talked about, the performance versus the internal reality. By admitting she did mind, she reclaimed all that emotional labor.
Her home reset reflected this new internal space. She was cooking simple meals, eating at the table, not standing up or distracted.
She's letting emotions pass through without turning them into a to-do list.
And the final piece is the recalibration with Leo. It wasn't a destructive breakup. It was a shift to new ground, based on authenticity. She just told him her new truth.
I don't want to perform being fine anymore. I want what's real, even if it's slower.
And because she was honest, he was thoughtful, he wasn't defensive, they just adjusted their footing.
And the whole story ends with this powerful image of Mara waking up, feeling like the year ahead is an open road. Not because it's suddenly easy, but because she wasn't dragging all that old weight behind her anymore.
We've really seen how this intense emotional energy, when you channel it through radical honesty, can lead to these powerful, swift recalibrations.
From a stack of letters to the most intimate relationships.
The goal here was insight before action, and she achieved that by naming what was hers and what was not.
Which really raises an important question for you, listening to this. If this energy has shown you the real story beneath your reactions, if Jupiter has magnified a painful truth for you, what's your plan? How will you carry that truth forward and define your new emotional parameters for this year?
The provocation for you is this. The act of putting something heavy down isn't some complicated procedure. It's a decision of integrity. So what is that one piece of old weight, that inherited pattern, that boundary you've been terrified to set, that performance of competence that you need to finally set down so this new year can actually meet you fully and honestly?
Imagine how light you would feel, ready to stand on new, manageable ground.